Hi there, it's Nicole for Lawn Fawn, and today I have a card featuring the You Color My World stamp set, as well as some other Lawn Fawn stamps and dies. I've combined the cute little crayon from the You Color My World stamps. It now has the coordinating die, which is amazing. I love that. And I am going to stamp this crayon on some watercolor cardstock several times using a black water or an ink that works well with water. It's waterproof. This is the Jet Black Archival ink from Ranger. And I'm going to stamp the crown several times. A couple of these were not the best impression. I usually like to stamp the image a few extra times when I'm creating or replicating an image like this. That way I make sure and get some good stamped impressions. For these crayons today, I am using the Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers for this wonderful watercolored look. I'm using about 2 tones for the crayon itself, using that darker tone for the crayon, and then the lighter color I am using for the crayon wrapper. So it's a tone on tone, but I want that wrapper around the crayon to be slightly lighter. Then I'm using the flesh colored Zig marker for the little oval there on the crayon, because I'm going to be stamping some fun little faces there in a little bit. I chose to do all of the coloring first. Let the ink dry real well. This is a water-based marker that's going to give you a watercolored look. So by using or letting it dry real well, then die cutting it and then stamping the face, I think I get a much nicer looking stamped face. You just want to make sure that you let it dry before you try to stamp on top of it. For all of the markers I'm using here, I have listed the marker colors in the upper left corner of the screen to make it easy to see exactly which colors I'm using for all of these images. I started with the red, then went with my orange, and now I'm on the yellow. Again, only using a couple colors. I do not have all of the Zig markers, so I had to be a little creative here with some of them. You'll see that in a little bit. On a couple of them, I felt like it needed a little bit more variation, I guess, for the crayon wrapper. And I'll show you with the green one how I went about getting kind of a two-tone look with only one color or 2 colors of marker, because I don't want it to be as dark as the actual crayon. So to do this, I am going to do a tip-to-tip technique where I take my lighter marker, touch the tip to the darker green that I just used for the crayon, and then kind of blend that into the marker wrapper, or the crayon wrapper rather, part of that, and it gives it a much nicer two-tone look. I'm going to do the same thing for the blue. Color in the marker part with my darker, or definitely have a darker tint to that crayon, and then I'll do the tip to tip to get a little bit more of a two-tone look to the crayon wrapper. I'm going to finish with my purple crayon. And I'm lucky that these 2 purples work together because they're the only 2 purple Zig markers that I have. So I was glad that they blended nicely because I really wanted to include some purple, but these are all I have in purples because I don't tend to use a lot of purple in my coloring, so those are usually the ones that I don't go for. So I'm going to go ahead and die cut out this crayon now 5 or 6 times, and I see that I forgot to color in the base portion there for the blue crayon, so I did do that real quick. Now I laid all my crayons out. Part of the reason that I didn't stamp the faces was because I wanted to stamp them after the Zig markers had dried. The other reason is because I knew I wanted them to go kind of every which way, kind of a random type pattern, some with the tip up, some with the tip down. To do this, I laid them out first and then I stamped the faces so that I wasn't committed to having the crayon go one way or another before I determined which way I wanted it to go. Now, the You Color My World stamp set does come with one face, the face I used for the orange crayon. All of these other faces are from the Sweet Smiles stamp set, the gumball machine stamp set that has all of those faces. I love it. I like that it has so many faces, and you can customize so many of the Lawn Fawn stamps with these cute faces because there's such a nice variety there. So that's what I did. I Added a little blush color for the cheeks, a little red for the tongue sticking out, and then a black gel pen for the eyes and the mustache. For the base of the card itself, I am going to stamp some beachside 12 by 12 paper, or die cut rather, some beachside 12 by 12 paper with a stitched rectangle die. I'll use that same size die and die cut that from white cardstock and vellum. The blue stars is going to be the actual background. Then from the white and the vellum, I will be using the new Puffy Cloud Borders dies to die cut some cloudy borders to tuck my crayons in and around. So I'll start with the vellum rectangle first, and I'll take one of my Puffy Cloud borders, kind of line it up there where I think I want it to go on the background, tape it in place so it doesn't shift, and then run that through my big shot. Next, I will take the white cardstock and another one of the Puffy Cloud borders and kind of do the same thing, line that up, make sure that it's not going to go higher than the vellum cloud border. This is going to be the layer that I actually stamp the greeting on, and run that through my Big Shot die cutting machine. And then from that leftover vellum piece, I ended up cutting one remaining border. I did that later. I thought I'd only want the two, but after I tucked them all in and stamped my greeting, I realized I wanted a third, so you will see that third border here in just a little bit. So I've laid out my crayons kind of how I think I want them to go. And next I'm going to take that greeting, and this is the same greeting as from the You Color My World stamp set, but it's just in a different font. It's actually from the Lawn Fawn Starry Backdrops stamp set, and I cut it apart because it's two lines, one on top of another, but I wanted it to be one long greeting. So I just cut it apart, positioned it that way. I'm going to stamp it off once and make sure that it's nice and lined up. And then I will go ahead and stamp that right there on that white cloudy border. Here is that little leftover piece of vellum from where I cut my one cloudy backdrop, and you can see how that looks there on the front of the card. I like that a lot. Finally, I am going to color or stamp and color one of the birds from the Hello Sunshine stamp set using the Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers. Again, these are all colors I used for the crayons themselves. I didn't get any different colors out, but I am going to blend these blues and the yellow together for the bird's body. And I'll have to work at that just a little bit to get it the way I want it to look. Remember when you're using these markers that watercolor paper really is going to be the best because it's made to work with watercolor products. Once that's dry, I'll go ahead and die cut that with the coordinating die. Again, use the black gel pen for the eye to really make it pop. And then I can go ahead and put the whole scene together. First with the starry background, then the vellum cloud border, the white cloud border with the stamped greeting. Go ahead and tuck all of those crayons in and around that cute cloudy or cloud border. I love how bright and fun these are. Kind of work to make sure I get that exactly the way I want it to look. To disguise the adhesive there on the vellum border that's going to be on the front, I am going to use a little Ranger Matte Medium, and I'll show you that in a minute. I'll go ahead and attach my bird with a glue dot. I think he adds a nice touch of color there. I'm going to put a little tip of the matte medium glue on the tip of my finger just because it was handy, and then I'm going to dab the glue in the corners of the vellum border so that you don't see it. And then I'll lay something heavy on that while the glue dries so that it stays nice and flat. Finally, I'm going to add a scattering of Pretty Pink Posh sequins and little confetti stars to finish off my page using the Zotz Bling glue dots. They're little teeny tiny glue dots that work wonderfully for attaching small things like sequins. And I will go ahead and glue all of those in place, and that will finish off this panel. I will attach this to a white card base, and my card is all finished. I hope you've enjoyed this video showcasing the You Color My World stamp set used with the Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.